Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Keep Growing podcast. I am Kathy Canham from CHOP, and I am thrilled today to have our culinary medicine team here to talk about saccharin. Don't leave. I'm telling you, I got a little preview, and it's very controversial. I need to learn all my words. It's very controversial. So, stay tuned, and can you guys introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Nicole Swartz, the chef of culinary medicine.
And I'm Stacy Sattovia, the director of culinary medicine and a general internist here. So we're going to talk about non-nutritive sweeteners in general, but the story will start with saccharin. So saccharin was the first artificial sweetener. And believe it or not, it was actually discovered in 1879. So these components have been within our food system for years now. And interestingly, it was discovered by a German scientist who was working at Johns Hopkins, and he left the lab and ate a sandwich and realized the sandwich tasted much sweeter than he anticipated. So started licking his fingers and realized that sweetness was on his fingers. And I'm telling this story from memory, so some of the details may be a bit different. But he went back to the lab and actually started licking things within the lab to find out what it was that was sweet. And basically it was a coal tar derivative that we now know as saccharin, and that he named as saccharin at that point. He left, set up a shop in New York City, and started selling it as a sugar alternative, basically. Added to food, added to beverages, and it caught on. So much in the way that sugar was used as a cure-all, saccharin was starting to be used as a cure-all as well. And it actually did many things. It was used for people with diabetes, but it was also very inexpensive to manufacture. And sugar has always been extraordinarily expensive, particularly from a human standpoint. So saccharin really was an interesting chemical development in the late 1800s. So the story starts with saccharin, and then since then we've, come up with other chemicals that are also sweet. We collectively call these things non-nutritive sweeteners because they have little to no calories. Interestingly, in the United States, so some of these are synthetically manufactured, like in a factory, and some are actually derivatives of naturally occurring sweet things, like stevia, for example. The new sort of players on the block in the last 20 years or so are the sugar alcohols. So things like erythritol and xylitol. And those are incredibly interesting, and something where we really have some data coming out in the last few years that show that they could potentially cause harm. So if we lump these all together, non-nutritive sweeteners include artificial sweeteners, some naturally occurring things, and then the sugar alcohols.
Can I jump in with a question?
Please.
Or will that throw you off?
No, I'll keep rambling, so please do.
And I don't want to steer you, or I don't want to continue to throw you off, but why? So you mentioned that there's so many different kinds now. I mean, you can just go to Bob Evans or something, and there's
some packets.
There's mounds of every colored packet
right?
next to it, and it seems like a lot of people are like, "Oh, give me the pink baguette, or give me this, give me that." Why? My impression is that some are considered more, and I'm using this term extremely loosely, healthy than others. Is that true, or are they all just a bunch of garbage?
Well, so we can think about it. A lot of people think about it in that way. And, we have used these within our food system for primarily two reasons. One is weight loss, so replacing the calories of sugar with an artificial sweetener. And two, for control of diabetes. So allowing individuals who have diabetes to have sweetness without the stress of true sugar. Interestingly, the majority of the safety data for artificial sweeteners, the longest human safety data is about 3 months in length. And people have started to have exposure to these things for years and years now, and we haven't always known what the effects of that are. Interestingly, the World Health Organization took a look at this a couple of years ago in 2023, and they came out with a paper titled Health Effects of the Use of Non-Sugar Sweeteners, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. This was in 2023. They essentially, their summary of this was, they advised us not to use non-sugar sweeteners for weight control. Basically, they looked at all of the studies over the last 20, 30 years, looking at non-nutritive sweeteners and that use over time, and they looked to see if it actually benefited people with weight loss, diabetes control, and what the impact was on things like heart disease and cancer and all of those things we want to avoid. Basically, they found that in short studies, short-term use, non-nutritive sweeteners can contribute to weight loss, but the benefit is only a couple of months long. After that, there's no benefit to using a non-nutritive sweetener over sugar, for example. In patients with diabetes, there actually is perhaps a trend toward harm with non-nutritive sweeteners. So regardless the color of the packet you pick, yellow, pink, blue, there actually was a little bit of an increase toward increased cardiovascular disease, increased weight gain, just all of the markers we don't like to see. So basically the World Health Organization came out and said, we've been using these for weight control and we've been using them for diabetes control. And it doesn't seem to work. And there could be a slight trend toward harm with some of these agents. So that really caught people's attention and, again, caused a lot of controversy. The mechanism for a lot of these things remains pretty speculative. Is there a caloric compensation? So you consume something really sweet, and then your body doesn't get the nutrients that it typically associates with sweetness. For example, if I eat an apple and it's very sweet, I'm going to get some nutrients from that further down my GI tract. If I have a packet of blue sweetener, nothing comes after that gives me nutrition. So there's this idea of caloric compensation. There's also concern that these agents may impact our microbiome. So they may change the pH in our GI tract. They may increase the populations of bacteria that are harmful to our GI tract. So lots of speculative mechanisms, but they don't seem to be benefiting us. So that's non-nutritive sweeteners as a whole. The sugar alcohols, though, are really interesting. So sugar alcohols are basically things like erythritol and xylitol. These are naturally occurring in foods, particularly in fruits, often in the skin of fruits. But the amount that's actually in a fruit versus the amount that food manufacturers put in a product is like 6,000 times higher in a manufactured product. You would have to consume, I think we figured out, like 50 pounds of watermelon to actually have the amount of erythritol that's present in a Halo Top ice cream, for example.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And how many of us have eaten the whole carton?
Well, and that's about it. So that's about 30 grams of erythritol.
Aren't the
in
sugar
a Halo Top.
alcohols the ones that are also associated with definitely affecting the GI tract? That was a very podcast way of saying that, because basically it's don't go far from a bathroom kind of situation.
So sugar alcohols will pull water into the GI tract. Yeah, and so you can end up with some bloating and diarrhea.
Is that what was in those potato chips years ago? They were called Olestra?
Yeah, that was
that's
a
what
fake
they
fat.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that wasn't an alcohol,
A sugar
alcohol, but
right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I just remember those. I stay clear of those babies.
So sugar alcohols are interesting because they don't have to be on the food label. So this is getting a lot of attention right now. And this is a designation called generally recognized as safe or GRAS. And it's an FDA designation for something that is generally recognized as safe, like the sugar alcohols. And so food manufacturers don't have to put it on the label unless they make a claim about sugar on the label. So, for example, if I am manufacturing a honey bun, for example, I can use a sugar alcohol to replace a lot of the starch, a lot of the fiber, and the sugar within that product. In fact, some baked goods can be up to 60 to 70% sugar alcohol by volume. And it doesn't have to be on the label unless I say keto, low sugar. I make some sort of sugar claim, then I have to put it on the label, so you'll see that. The reason why this is controversial is because there have been a couple of studies that have come out in the last few years. The first was in 2023, and then the second one was in 2024. And basically, it was a group at Cleveland Clinic, and they were looking at individuals who had what we call residual cardiovascular risk. So they had two groups of people with heart disease, and when they sort of made them look the same for all of the risk factors of cardiovascular disease, one group seemed to be having more heart attacks and deaths from heart disease than the other group. And so they did something called an untargeted metabolomic study. So they were basically looking at the blood of the people who had that excess risk just to see, is there something they're being exposed to that the other group is not, that's maybe making them have excess risk? And what they found over and over again were these sugar alcohol signals. And so then they did a study on erythritol specifically, looking at how that impacts cardiovascular risk. And what they found actually is that it is associated with cardiovascular risk. And then they did some follow-up, pretty sophisticated studies where they actually thought about how it drives cardiovascular risk. And it seems like it makes platelets stick together more and makes blood clots in blood vessels. And that's the reason for the excess cardiovascular risk in that group. Basically, they also, when they were looking at the platelets sticking together and making a blood clot, they gave healthy people 30 grams of erythritol. And remember, that's what I said is in a Halo Top ice cream. And then they measured how sticky their platelets were. And their platelets, within 30 minutes of consuming that 30 grams of erythritol, stuck together like crazy. And then they stayed sticky to each other for almost 2 days. And so these sugar alcohols are doing something that is potentially harmful to us from a cardiovascular standpoint. And maybe other ways too, we don't know yet. They actually, the following year, published another study, the same group, that looked at xylitol. And they basically ran the same experiments and saw that the effects were the same. So platelets got sticky and they had excess cardiovascular risk. So the World Health Organization data looking at artificial sweeteners, and then this new cardiovascular data looking at sugar alcohols, maybe putting these together shows us that non-nutritive sweetener as a whole might not benefit us a whole lot and could potentially be increasing our risk of disease. Mm-hmm. So I think in kind of coming to an overall summary, I think that these agents need a little bit of our attention to think about, is it worth us thinking about strategies to go without these things? And maybe focus on water, think about other ways to sweeten our foods without engaging in these chemicals. The American Diabetes Association actually came out in December of last year, and they said, and I'm going to quote because this is really fantastic, and the first time they've said this: emphasis on water intake over nutritive and non-nutritive sweetened beverages, so sugar and the things we've talked about, and the use of non-nutritive sweeteners over sugar-sweetened products in moderation and for the short term only. So they're recommending that we don't use these things beyond the short term. So this is a really fast-moving area of nutrition science that is worth us having an appreciation for.
As a diabetic, I know I've read, I don't know, it could have been just like Prevention Magazine or something, over time, that for a lot of diabetics, even using the artificial sweetener can actually still have an effect on your blood sugar. I'm sure it depends on the person, but I thought that was interesting. I don't like the aftertaste with them, so I've never never had an issue. I've never had to like pull myself off of them or anything. But there was that, and then it said, I know what I've read is that it can actually just make you want it more because you're not just getting the real thing, which I know that kind of spills over into a lot of different food groups, of course, but
yeah, there are a lot of theories as to why, and there's some pretty good science behind some of that for sure. A lot of it is pretty complicated. I think that the outcomes that patients that are meaningful to patients is the effect on heart disease and weight and diabetes control, and we're seeing that they just don't have the benefits that we hope they would. The other issue here that's getting a lot of attention is the idea of the GRAS designation, right, with the sugar alcohols. So the sugar alcohols are showing up in our food, in our bubble gum, in our toothpaste, and certainly in our beverages. And in a lot of places we just don't see. So eliminating that generally recognized as safe designation and making sure that these sugar alcohols are on food labels is a big public health initiative right now. So hopefully that changes. Another aspect of this that I find really interesting that I like to share with learners is Americans consume sweet things at about twice the rate of the rest of the world. It's fascinating. There was a terrific study in 2022 in Public Health Nutrition, and it looked at how much sugar we consume and how much non-nutritive sweeteners we consume as Americans compared to the rest of the world. And consistently in every category, it's about twice as much. So thinking about, celebrating water and consuming more water would probably be really great for us, and maybe put us on par with the rest of the world, which would be great.
Yeah.
Well, I was a pastry chef for 20 some years, so sugar was my life. I was the dealer. I was hanging, those cookies and cupcakes. So I had a huge sugar craving. Like I would eat it every day, after every meal, and it was a lot. I ate a lot. And when I got older and things weren't working as well, so I cut it down drastically. And what I noticed was the cravings slowly got less and less and less. Yeah. And then I also started to notice that things that I usually thought were good now tasted too sweet. Mm-hmm. So there is a transitional period, at least for me, there was a transitional period where it took me some time to cut those cravings, but the cravings eventually did go down, so where I did not need to eat as much sugar as I had before.
Yeah, one of the really practical things that we talk about in the kitchen with people is, when we're consuming things that are industrially processed or ultra processed, for example, flavored yogurt or a flavored beverage, for example, a sweetened beverage. If you took plain yogurt and added sugar to it to match the amount of sugar that's in a Yoplait or a Chobani, for example, that has a flavor and is sweetened, you actually can't add as much sugar as they have put in it. You wouldn't be able, it would taste terrible to you. But on the manufacturing side, they can super saturate it with sugar. So one strategy to decrease sugar intake is actually to buy the unsweetened stuff and add a little bit of sweet yourself. You're going to get a lot less than the manufacturer has given you. In addition, then, you're also likely saving some money too. The plain stuff is always cheaper.
Or you can just, if you're making a recipe that calls for sugar, just cut it in half.
Yeah.
Just cut it in half. I mean, sugar adds some of that caramelization. There's some color to it that it adds to the product. But for the most part, you won't even really notice that you've cut the recipe sugar amount in half.
good tips.
So non-nutritive sweeteners are worth consideration, I think, and keeping our eye on the data that continues to come out around these may help inform how we talk to patients, because we're often recommending non-nutritive sweeteners and sugar alcohols to our most vulnerable populations, right? So patients with obesity, patients with diabetes who are at risk for continued metabolic dysfunction. So, and heart disease, right?
I'm thinking of, you just walk through the grocery store or Walgreens or anything, and the aisle is just continuing to expand with the sugar-free.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that sugar, and that draws you in because you're like, oh, it's less calories and everything, but
that sweetness is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But just the taste. I can't get past the part that it just doesn't taste as good.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I remember, it must have been in the 70s when Sweet and Low came out, and it was in that little, I don't know if it was a glass bottle or a plastic bottle, and it was clear. And man, I remember being, a little kid, and I'd have iced tea, and it'd be like squirting the heck out of that stuff in the iced tea. So I'm so glad that I kicked that to the curb at some point and don't even like sweetened iced tea now. But anyway, so, well, are we good? You want to wrap up here? All right. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you if you have comments. Do you partake in the artificial sweeteners? They are so addictive, as we have talked about.
Yeah, please share your thoughts, your strategies.
And just listening to you talk has made me realize that, because I'm thinking, I don't like that artificial taste. Well, I like that flavored yogurt.
Yeah.
And I never even thought, I'm like, well, it's Greek. I'm making a good move. I typically will add my blueberries, but I never thought about, wait, that birthday cake flavoring is not natural? They did not
even
actually
the vanilla.
work some birthday cake.
They add more sugar into the vanilla ones too, so you have to get the plain,
completely unflavored.
Yeah.
Make it your own. Make it your own.
As important as this information is, and very interesting, sometimes it just kind of sucks the fun right out of things. But I know that you mean well, and it's super great information, because none of us want any of these side effects.
No,
and
right.
Want to work to be happy and healthy all at the same time. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'd love to see comments from you, and of course, any ideas for future podcasts that you'd like to hear about. So.
Yeah. What do you want to hear about from culinary medicine?
And check out our other podcasts too.
Oh, good one, Nicole.
There's a great one about fiber.
Fiber.
Good marketer. Yes, check out that fiber. It's one of our best selling
top 5 podcasts.
Yes. Don't find yourself not being able to converse with others about it.
Yes.
You're
fiber knowledge.
Yes, you need to be on top of it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.